there, I'm Ishta. This is Monday, day 1 of week 21, I think, of 52 weeks of vlogging, and this is the first edition of Board Games in the Basement, because that's where we are. I'm in my basement. I have juice boxes for a table. No judging. For today, I wanted to start with a new game. It's called Bohnanza. Get it? Like bone, German for bean, bonanza, like tons of something, like bean bonanza. Get it? So here I have it in its box. It's half the box. The rest of it is, I'll put a picture there. That's the box. And Bohnanza is one of those games that is really fun to play and also really simple to learn, but challenging to master. That's my favorite kind. So let's get started. Bohnanza is a game you play with cards. There's not actually a board. It's Board Games in the Basement, but there's not always a board. I should have called this something else. And on one side of the cards is a coin, and on the other side of the cards is a picture of a bean with the name of the bean and some coins with numbers beneath them down here, which I'll explain to you in a minute. There are 11 different kinds of beans in Bohnanza, and basically what you're doing is planting beans, harvesting beans, and selling beans. So the game begins when the dealer deals out 5 cards to each player. The rest of the cards get put as a draw pile, and then you also have a space for a discard pile. Okay, the person to the left of the dealer goes first, and they're gonna look at their cards, but this is the important thing. You never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, change the order of your cards. This is crucial. I'm the person to the left of the dealer, and my top card, when I flip my deck over, is a coffee bean. First thing you do is plant fields. You can plant either 1 bean field of 1 type of bean, or 2 bean fields of 2 different types of beans. Remember those coins with numbers at the bottom that I told you I'd fill you in on? When you plant your bean field, when you go to harvest later, you get the number of coins for the number of bean cards you have in that field. So if your field has, for example, in this instance of coffee beans, less than 4 coffee beans cards in the field, you get nothing, baby. The first thing you do is plant a field. You have to plant 1. So I'm gonna plant a coffee bean. And look, my second card is another coffee bean. So I'm gonna plant that coffee bean in the same field. Okay, I've planted 2 cards. Now I have to stop. By the way, you don't have to plant 2 cards. You can just plant 1, but you definitely have to plant at least 1. Stage 2 is drawing. I'm gonna draw 2 cards from the draw pile and put them face up over here. A wax bean and another coffee bean. Woohoo! Once again, this is very important. Do not, under any circumstances, add the drawn cards from the draw pile into your hand. Now the fun really starts, because this guy can trade beans with this guy. And this guy can also trade beans with this guy. Also, other players can donate beans to the person who's taking their turn, but that's not really a first turn kind of thing to do. So here's an example of trading. Hey, I've got a coffee bean. I'd gladly give you my coffee bean for that wax bean you just drew.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Here you go.
Thanks. Now there are certain things to remember when trading. See that number at the top of the card? That tells you how many cards there are of that bean. The beans with fewer cards are more valuable, so you want to consider that when making trades. You don't want to give away an awesome sauce card for a really crappy poo one. 2 really crappy poo ones maybe, but not just 1. Trading and donating is done, so now it's time to plant the beans that we just got. Player number 1 got 2 coffee beans, so he's gonna stick them in his coffee bean field. Now at this point, player 1 might be tempted to say, hey, I've got 4 coffee beans in my coffee bean field. I can trade them for 1 gold coin, holla! This would be a bad idea, because coffee beans are a common card. There's 24 of them, dudes. It takes a lot of coffee beans in order to get a decent number of gold coins. And once you have 3 gold coins, if you want, 1 time, if you need to, you can buy a 3rd bean field, which allows you to plant more beans and harvest more beans and get more of that cash. Sell when you have to. Okay, so the player who traded for the wax bean is gonna plant their wax bean. Player 1 has 1 more thing to do. Draw 3 cards from that draw pile and place them in their hand in the order they get drawn at the back. Play passes to the left. Now we move to player number 3. This is where player 1 might get interested in donating. Any card that stays in a player's hand will eventually have to be planted. And player 1 has a cocoa bean here, and then another cocoa bean hanging out back here behind the wax bean. So it might be in player 1's best interest to ditch that wax bean as fast as possible. All traded or donated cards must be planted in stage 3 of a turn. And so it goes. For a rather long time, really, Bohnanza is meant to be played at a pretty quick pace, otherwise the game takes a while. You play until the draw deck has been exhausted 3 times. When you exhaust it the first time, you shuffle the discard deck and use that as a draw deck. Once it's exhausted 3 times, you play to the end of that person's turn, and then you count up the cash. At the end of the game, the players sell what's left in their bean fields, count up their money, and whoever has the most coins takes it all. Well, okay, they don't take it all, but they win the game. As you can see, Bohnanza is one of those games that seems really simple, but actually requires quite a lot of strategizing and planning ahead. You don't want to get stuck with crappy cards in your hand that you can't plant later, but at the same time, you don't want to end up planting things and then having to harvest them too early. There's a lot of negotiating and wheeling and dealing, which, frankly, I kind of suck at, so it's good that I showed you this game by myself. And that's how you play Bohnanza. Leave any questions in the comments. I know I didn't quite cover everything because there are always things that come up during the course of the play of the game. I plan to make this a regular feature, so also leave any names of games that you want to see tutorials on in the comments. I love those games with bits. And I'll see what I can do to oblige you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.